Hello, my name is Dr. Chukwunonso Henry Debem. I want to welcome you to this live session on the essentials of quantitative methods and data analysis. I hope you join other colleagues who will be joining me online to appreciate this moment. So we're going to have some interactions, and these are my students from the Brunel University of London. So I'm sure you could get one or two things. If you are in public health, if you're a student of public health, whether you're a master's degree or PhD, doctorate, please join us. And this is one of those my sessions. Have fun. Thank you. Okay, so I welcome you to today's session on quantitative research methods and data analysis. We're going to be talking about those basic concepts that would help you form, or those concepts that form the foundation of the quantitative research methods, and some data analytical aspects, all that will help you in your final assignments and will help to build up your learning outcomes. So I encourage you to just listen and follow up the concepts. Then, as I will be going on, if you have any questions, you can use the chat box. Yeah, just put it up. Hold on a second. So you can just type it out in the chat box so that you don't forget that. So when I'm done with the presentation, then we can, I'll do as much to go through the chats, respond to your questions. Then if you also want to make any verbal interactions or questions, you will be allowed to do that. Okay, so that's fine. Just one sec, as I will be. Okay, so let me share my screen and we go ahead. Okay, if you let me know if you can see my screen.
Yes.
Yes, you can.
Good afternoon. Yeah, good afternoon, Mr. Nasser.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon. And you are?
Joy.
Joy. Good afternoon,
Yes,
Joy.
please.
Okay, thank you. Nice having you around. Okay, so let's run through this. Okay, so this is quantitative research and data analysis. So like I said, if any of you, if you are joining just now, just if you have any question, please write it up. I'll keep piling them in the chat box. As soon as I'm done with this, I would try to attend to all your questions. Then if you also want to do some verbal questions or interactions, that's fine at the end, just so that I don't lose my flow of thoughts. Okay, so these are the learning objectives for this session. So at the end of this session, you should be able to understand the key elements and concepts of quantitative research and analysis. Again, you should be able to gain sufficient confidence in making appropriate choices of statistical tests for your research, statistical analysis, or analytical plan. That also applies to your assignment and your research project. At the end of the program. So it's very key, if not about the most important thing here, because that is where students always fall short of making some vital decisions in terms of which of the analysis or which of the statistical tests would they apply. So I'll just give you some concepts, very simple concepts of how to making those choices and things you need to consider, before you get to that point. Then at the end, I also expect that you acquire essential skills relevant in conducting quantitative research or quantitative analysis using SPSS software. SPSS is what is applicable here, but you're also free to use whatever software, any statistical software. They all do the same thing and do them well. It's all about understanding the procedures and the features for that. So, but for here, in case you are used to all other statistical software, it's fine. Please keep to them. Nothing says you just have to use SPSS. Okay. So for here, we are introducing SPSS for those who are coming into using any statistical software at all. This could be your option, and your your first attempt to use one. It's not such a bad one, user friendly. So I think it's something you would like to know. However, if you have access to other software, and it's also fine. You can only have this as adding to your bouquet of statistical software. Okay, to your full package. So it's okay to have just be familiar with a number of them. But again, please try and focus on one that you are very familiar with and that's more friendly to you. Okay, so let's look at what research is all about. I think I've said this in my first live session. I always want to bring it up because that will help to form the foundation of what research is all about and what this topic and this module it's also will be treating. That's also how you want to apply research beyond this program, just to have a general idea what research is, not just in the field of public health or health, also in every other social sciences, in economics and psychology, wherever you're going to apply that. That's what research is all about. Now, I define it here in my own terms as creative and systematic process of generating, establishing, and validating new existing knowledge and ideas. Now, I'm going to pick on the creative process. Creative process being that you have every research you found in this world, wherever you find them, all ideas, people's ideas, they are all products of creativity, innovation, trying to respond and answer research questions and looking at how best to generate data that would respond to those questions. There are different circumstances, there are different situations, and there is no one straight cut or one straight system of analyzing situations and obtaining data to answer research questions. There are all different types. So people over the time have actually made very good attempts to respond to the needs of getting research information that will help to resolve some problems. So they're all creative ideas, and this is just to say that you can also create yours. There could also be circumstances or situations where the existing research methods are not very appropriate to respond. So yes, who says you cannot create yours? So they are all products of creativity. You can do that, and that's why you could find so many methods, so many approaches, all trying to respond. But your work, your job here is to understand the circumstances and the situations where those different methods are applied, and you should be able to justify why you think they are applicable to your own research or your context of your own research. So that's basically what you're going to be doing, and you should be supporting those with evidence, right? To show that it's not just something you thought of, it's something you've done some research, you've gathered from evidence that have already been proven in many circumstances or many contexts. So that's what it is. Systematic process means it's an orderly manner, it's an organized process. It's not something you just thought out. It just a thing out of thought out, or you think out arbitrarily and you want to start applying them. There has to be sequence. One comes before the other, one comes before the other, and the product of one fits into the other, and that's how it's generated all through, right? So until you get to the final point. So it's a systematic process that involves some elements of rigor, and there is it's very important that you follow that process, those sequence. If in any way you mix them up, there could be a problem. And all we are trying to do is to protect the sanity, the validity of the research, of the results or findings that are going to come out of your research. So you don't just present something that's already biased by errors, with so many errors and stuff like that. So one might not have enough confidence to work with those findings if your procedures are wrong. So that's what makes it systematic. Then you have other purpose of research, either you're generating or you're establishing or you're validating new and existing knowledge and ideas. So have that at the back of your mind. This is generally what research is all about, and that's basically what you're going to see on this module. Okay, so let's look at different, quantitative and qualitative research. Of course, there are different types, features that will make them different, and that also explains why each is applicable to specific or different contexts or situations. Of course, this is the first thing you should know, and learn when you are going through this. But just we're aware of reminding and just refreshing your memory and your understanding of that on the general research methods or approaches. So these are just the differences where you have a quantitative, like you're looking at the nature of quantitative research against qualitative. The nature, of course, is specific. This is when you want to answer very specific questions, as against the holistic questions, the holistic ideas, trying to form a general idea, about something. That's when you apply qualitative. Then for the approach, it's objective, very objective. It's something that can be measured, and someone else can also follow the same process or procedures to arrive at the same results. So it's very objective. It's not threatened by any form of bias, by a researcher or by the respondents. It's a process that one has to follow to arrive about the same kind of results, even if it's repeated several times. While subjective has to do with a lot of people's views and ideas and your thoughts, on respondents or participants or subjects' ideas about, stuff. So that's what qualitative is all about. Then research type, quantitative is more of conclusive and deductive. It's just trying to narrow down an existing theory or knowledge and trying to narrow it down with numerics to be specific and make certain conclusions as to what extent that could be measured. While the other one is exploratory and inductive. You are, getting into an unknown area and you try to explore to get different ideas, of what could be happening there. It's still very wide. The boundaries are very open, unlike that of quantitative. Then you have the research, the nature of the data. It's measurable or quantitative for the quantitative approach, while for the qualitative, it could be verbal, observable, and descriptive. Now, for the aim and objectives, you also use terms like you want to determine, you want to examine, you want to predict, certain whatever that's your research interest is all about. Why that of qualitative, you're trying to explore, you're trying to discover and understand. So you can see the terms in the qualitative are more of open-ended, giving you room to get as much information that could explain certain views or mechanisms as possible, while the other is trying to nail it to, on something. So the method of data collection, for the quantitative, you have surveys, you have use of questionnaires and measurements. That of qualitative, basically use in-depth interviews or focus group discussions where there are lots of interactions and trying to pick out what people know and from their own perspective, what they could explain and how they see things. So it's still very open. You can also use questionnaires. Questionnaires are not just meant for the quantitative, but the way the structures and the features of the questionnaires you're using for the qualitative is quite different from that of the quantitative. Okay, but you can also use questionnaires where people might just respond or type or write or stuff like that. But I know essentially in-depth and focus group discussion where you have one-on-one perception, read meaning, the facial language, the body language, or speak volume. You need to get all those information as much as you could. So that's why in-depth and focus group discussion, it's more appropriate for that, for qualitative. Now, let's go to the steps in conducting a quantitative research. The various steps. You begin with your identifying a problem and the purpose. Identifying a problem, like I would always say, I forgot to mention that when I was describing the research methods, research generally. Research is part of a solution to solving a problem. Every research. If you're doing a research that you're not attempting to solve a problem, it's not a research. It's not like what commonly people get into, students or even faculty, that you want to make a lot of publications because you want to increase your academic status. Making publications that are not relevant in public health or not even in any field doesn't make any sense at all. If you are busy pursuing status as against solving problems in the society, in the world, for humanity, that actually doesn't make any sense. So if you're looking at any research, there has to be a problem first. You want to solve a problem, then what could be the purpose of your research? You identify your purpose inside the problem, because there's something not too clear about this problem. You want to know what is likely spread of this disease, looking at probably gender distribution, age distributions, or could there be certain kind of seasons or periods where infection or contraction is high, or hospital admission is high, stuff like that. So you want to know why, could be the cause of this. Are there any likely behavioral factors or environmental factors that could be leading to that? And this is where core epidemiology comes in. So there are a lot of questions, and you cannot answer them all, but you still start from somewhere. So in trying to get the purpose of your research, you're also linking it to developing a research question. And that question is responding. Of course, there is kind of a gray area or gap about the nature of the disease or problems you are trying to solve. So that leads you to having a research question, which is once you find the purpose of what your research could be, you can now draft a research question from that. And all these are all coming up from a topic. Of course, identifying a problem, understanding the purpose would already have given you the topic of your research, your research interest. Then you develop a research question to help you focus on what exactly, at the end of your research, what exact questions would your findings or results be responding to, so that you don't have one thing in mind and at the end you are answering a different thing or responding. Students are that's very, very common among students, in having a title, but the findings, are already derailed into doing something else. So that question is what your conclusion will answer. When you are doing your conclusion, you're actually responding directly to the question. Okay, this and this and these are exactly what's going on. These are possible causes, or these are the possible factors. These are the distribution. Okay, it's high in this population group, or it's low here. Stuff like that, all aligned to your research question. Now, when you find your research question, before you move ahead, you're going to talk about the review. I want to talk about the review of literature. You don't just jump into your research. You want to do some literature review. And could any of you tell me exactly what you would want to know? Why do you conduct literature review? There are several reasons. Just give me 2 or 3 reasons from. Yeah? Why would you want to conduct literature review from all you've known? No wrong, no right answer. It's fine. Of course, no wrong answer. All good answers. So tell me, quick one. Time.
To make sure there's sufficient data available.
Sufficient data available? Then it all depends. Are you working with, are you working with data, secondary data? If you're looking at data availability, what if you're looking at primary data that you need to conduct and interact with subjects? That's still fine. I'm just trying to extend a bit of your answer.
That would be in the case of secondary data partly.
Okay, that's fine. Then in case of secondary data, of course, you'll be looking at more for databases, stored data. You could find surveys. Probably you want to look at their database and see if you can make something out of it. Okay, that's fine. Any other person? For any reason?
I think to know how relevant it is in how many researchers have used the research article.
Okay, good. So let me also refine it a bit. Probably it seems like you say 2 things at the same time, but let me pick up the first one, which is also very relevant. You don't want to repeat the work that is already been saturated or is already saturated in the literature. That there are so many work on that. You don't want to waste resources trying to find out what is already known in the literature. So one of the key reasons, or among the key reasons of conducting literature review is you want to find out what is already known in the literature and what is the knowledge gap, what are the things that are still gray, so that your research will be relevant in adding knowledge in the entire body of literature. So you don't just go and repeat what people have done, or a knowledge that has already been saturated and that has become common knowledge. You don't want to like go to do that. So that's one thing. That's one thing there. So if you already have known and this already, then you don't have to repeat. You don't have to. You can just use whatever findings others have and to respond to your questions, or go ahead and respond to the problem. It could be you're needing more information to support your intervention plan or designing whatever it is. That is one. Then secondly is you also have different methods, different approaches available. So you want to find out the kind of methods and approaches that authors have already used in responding to that question. There are situations where you could have many work as a qualitative approach in the literature, and you discover that there's not too many work in the using quantitative approach. So that could be a knowledge gap, and you want to see, okay, can we get specific and objective findings on these, even though this is what the general qualitative research is saying. That is also one. You also find out if that's the research settings where that research has been conducted. It's possible that none of this research or none of those work have been done in your country or your research setting of interest, your country of interest. Yes, it could have been done in the West, in the North, and in America, and UK, and Europe, but not in Africa. And we cannot use findings in other regions to determine or inform decisions in Africa. So that becomes another knowledge gap that you want to set. Or it could also be even in your country. It's very possible that what happens in one African nation could be different from what's happening in another African nation. So it's something in European countries or in the West or anywhere, because there could be some hidden cultural, socio-cultural, some other factors that could, influence those outcomes to be different. So that's, not having it in your country or in your research area is also one of the research gaps. So the essence of the literature is to find out what is known and what is not known, and what are the methods that have been used, to provide research on that topic. Okay. So next one, you go to construct your hypothesis. Hypotheses are just proposed statements of assumptions of the possible outcomes, in the research based on the basic knowledge you know. Of course, the two possible outcomes are either, for example, you're looking at associations between two variables, or difference, between two groups, whatever it is. It's either there is no difference or no association, or there is. These are the two possible outcomes. The no difference or no association is called the null hypothesis. That's, we are saying, okay, we are assuming that there is no difference, there is no impact, no effect, no findings at all. Oh, no, not no findings. Let me say no effect, because no effect or no association is also a finding in research. It's also a result. Yes, it's also a result, and that's also could be published. All right. Now, the other one is the alternative hypothesis, which is the research hypothesis, the main research hypothesis that says we are proposing that there is an assumption, there is possibility that this association exists, or these differences or difference exists, or this impact or effect, whatever it is, exists. So these are the hypotheses, and it helps to, structure and specify your attention, your focus on that research. It's in some cases will help you to even know what statistical analysis or test that's more appropriate if you state them well. So it has to be either a difference, or it has to be association between variables, two or more, or probably just more of a descriptive findings, like want to know a pattern of disease in different groups, in the subgroups in the population. Then you have some descriptive or characteristics, across the social demographic characteristics of the population. That could also be finding or your own results. So it has to be any. And in that proposal, in the hypothesis, you could say, oh, it's like this or it's not like this. So that's basically what hypothesis it's also just two. It comes in pair, null and alternative hypothesis. Then when you get that, you get to your research, design, and methods. That will help you to now know, okay, which of these designs and methods will be more appropriate before you go ahead and start testing your hypothesis, which is basically data collection and analysis. Okay, now let's look at some quick types of quantitative research. You have descriptive, that describes the current status or situation of a population or group, like I said earlier. Then you go to relational. Most, if not all, of your quantitative research will fall into any of these four categories. So you talk about the relational when you want to address association between two or more variables in a group, or comparative when you want to look at addressing differences between two or more groups or variables. Then you have the causal research, where you want to determine the cause and effect. If one variable causes the outcomes or the effect in another variable. So that's called the causal influence, which is more it's more of very experimental and more rigorous than the rest. But that's not commonly not what you're going to do. In your research proposal, it has to be between the relational and comparative, basically. Now you look at the key terms that I also wanted to know. These terms, they're all associated with quantitative research. You have the target population, and the target population are the group of people or subjects or objects that you intend to study. Generally, you are looking at probably children below certain age or above certain age, or mother of reproductive age, men, adults, whatever. Then it comes to study population. The difference being that the study population is a subset of a target population. And these are the subset that you can access. You can access this subset. You might not be able to access all the study population, but again, there are these subsets that you can access. So any subset of the target population accessible to you is called the study population. From there, you get to the sample, which is a predetermined number of the subjects from the study population. You can see how it drops down. One will give you the other one will give you the sample. So you draw a sample from your study population that you can access. Then if you are dealing with people, I will say each person becomes an observation. So if you are dealing with records like files and maybe like you have in the hospital, so each record becomes is an observation. You have cases, you have participants or subjects. So each of them become an observation from that sample. And these are the subjects in that your sample that you intend to take measurements or intend to conduct measurements from. Then you come down to the measurement itself. The aspect of that subject, of that record, of that person that you're going to measure is called the variable. That's the variable. So if you're thinking about education status, income status, or whatever it is, sex, gender, class performance, they're all variable. Cholesterol, level, blood sugar level, all those are measurements you're going to take. They're all variables. Then the result of each of those variables, those measurements, is called a value. It's called a value. So just be familiar with these terms. Then just a schematic illustration of what I've just said. So you have the general population, general or target or study population. From there, you get the sample that you pick. That's pattern of selection anyway. It could be randomly, but pick from the major population. So the sample is a subset of the study population, and an observation is just one case, one observation or one participant from the sample. Then you take measurements from this person, which are the variables. It could be age, sex, education, or occupation. That's what it is. Just to help you understand it, but it's more of a very essential in statistics. Now let's look at types of variables. Please pay attention to these. These are where you need to understand very clearly. That will help you to take certain decisions when you want to determine your statistical tests. Okay. Now there are two types of variables. Two major types. Either variables based on influence, when you have one variable dependent on another or not dependent on another. So if you have variables whose nature or values in any setting are not dependent on any other variable, they are called independent or explanatory variables, because those variables are the ones that are explaining the changes or variability in the outcome variable, which is the dependent variables. So they are independent and they're also explanatory. That's how those terms come. Okay. Now you have the dependent variable where those ones are the ones that changes in other variables or their nature depends on the changes in other variables. So that's why they are called the dependent variables or outcome variables, right? And I make a note here to say that the dependency nature here does not mean causation. It doesn't mean, for the fact that a change, if I look this way, you look the other way, does not mean that my change of direction is what causes your change of direction, you know. So there could be something else that both of us are responding to. So when that thing happens, I tend to look left and you tend to look right. That's an association. But of course, causation begins with finding an association before you now research deeper to see if there is any causal relationship between the two variables. That's how it is. So association doesn't mean causation. And again, it's possible that in a research setting, a variable could be independent, but in another setting, that same variable could be dependent. That means it's possible in another setting, changes in other variables could also affect, the changes of that particular variable. So don't just say because, for example, education is non-dependent or independent in a research setting, you're thinking wherever you find education in any setting, it becomes independent. No, education could also be dependent because there are some other changes that could also affect why you are educated or not, or your level of education. So that's how it works. Now, we are now looking at variable types based on data forms. So you can see different variables looking at the nature of their data. So you have categorical and numeric. These are the two basic ones, categorical and numeric. And under categorical, you have binary, nominal, and ordinal. While under numeric, you have discrete and continuous. Please note that the decision you're going to make about your statistical test will depend on the type of variable it will depend on the type of variable, basically on the data forms or type of data that you're going to use. Is very key in making that decision. So try to know all that. Now, under the categorical variable, you have binary, which is the simplest form of categorical variable. It comes with only two options. Two options, yes or no. It could be someone's status, illiteracy or literacy status. Are you educated or not? Yes or no. Disease condition, yes or no. Death condition, alive or dead. So sex as well, where you have only male and female, you want to determine that becomes only the two options. So that's binary. It's the simplest form. It's also easy to work with. Then you also have nominal. Nominal these are more than two options. Definitely there are more than two options. If there are two options, it becomes binary or dichotomous variable. So dichotomous variable, same with binary outcomes or binary variable. Then you have nominal, which is just, they are more than two and they are basically known by names. What makes them nominal is just names. There is no other relationship, there is no order. So just names. Something like ethnicity is basically names. Something like marital status, you are single, you are married. So there is no, in any form, nothing says that the one who is married is in hierarchy, whether social or societal or health hierarchy over the single one, or if you are separated. It's just names. Again, name of your country. You are from here, you are from Czech Republic, you're from Nigeria, you're from Kenya, you're from Europe, or you're from Argentina. They are all names, they are all nominal. That is what separates or differentiates it from ordinal. The ordinal is also, there are also more than two options or two categories or options to choose. However, they are ordered. They have a sequence. They are ordered. And what makes them orderly? It means the only way it can make sense is you put them in certain sequence, either from ascending to the ascending from least to the highest or from highest to the least, descending order. So that order makes sense. And in some cases, they can be represented with numbers when you want to code them. And the code is just trying to show the hierarchy. It's not, the code and not the data. This is one thing you have to watch, and you'll find something like that in your final assignment, where people will see coded data with numbers. They will think the numbers are actually the actual value or results, and they start analyzing the numbers without knowing that they just codes. So it is still categorical variables, but coded in numbers, not the numbers are not the values. And once you analyze the numbers with that, you're bound to make a lot of mistakes. When you go to the numeric, you have two types: discrete. Discrete numeric are just numbers, but these are the things you can count. Anything you can just determine by counting. How many students attend class today? I can count and say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, or 19 students. That's discrete. You know, how many oranges in the basket? How many this were you able to purchase? Discrete. But continuous are things, the ones you can measure. For example, discrete as well can come only as integers, only integers. There's no fraction, there's no decimal, and there's no negative value or positive value. That's for discrete. But for continuous, you can have both. You can have negative value, you can have fractions, you can have decimals like body temperature, cholesterol level. I can measure your height, check your height, or even age in decimals if I want to. You have fractions. So that's what makes difference. However, your main concern is to know whether this is categorical or numeric. Then it's also good to know those of the binary or nominal ordinal, because it will help you in taking decisions for determining your appropriate statistical test. Okay, so I've gone through this. I've gone through them. So I just put these slides to help you remember the binary and dichotomous variables, and the examples, the nominal variables, ordinal variables, and the examples. They are numeric. The discrete variables, like I mentioned, just about counting. You have the continuous variables that you can obtain by measurement, and you could take possible values, negative or positive, give examples. Then descriptive statistics, coming to analysis itself. So you have two major types of analysis. It's either descriptive or it's inferential. Descriptive statistics are those ones that you just use to describe, maybe a population, characteristics of a population, the features of a population. They are descriptive. That's what it's called, right? So you can have that at univariate or bivariate level. You can also present those in text or tables or graphs. They are all descriptives. Why for inferential? These are the methods that will test and compare variables and draw conclusions about population based on the analysis of the sample data. So you want to see including if differences in certain population, the kind of trend. You want to look at the associations between variables or between groups, that could that's what's called inferential statistics. You use it to make inference over the mother population, generating data, because you cannot work with everyone. So you pick few samples, run that, and to certain level of confidence, that's where we start talking about 95% confidence interval, 95% confidence interval, or 90 or whatever. You can say to certain level of confidence, these findings on this sample, could apply to the general population. So that's the inferences or the inferential statistics talking about. So there are anything that could, come with that concept of making general decisions or information over over bigger generation population is called the inferential statistics. Okay, now we're going to look at so in your final assignment, you should be presenting your data. You should be presenting your data. Your descriptive data comes in tables. This is just an example of the table, how you can present that. Excuse me. Oh, okay, fast print. So that's how you can present so you can present your descriptive statistics in a table in this form. You don't have to copy, don't do copy and paste, don't copy SPSS output, because that will be required in your assignment. So don't pull what you have in the SPSS to put in your assignment. Yeah, you're going to be penalized for that. So construct your own table, and I was giving you a sample of how a table should look like. There's one advantage that tables have, they are better in summarizing data. So you can pull whole lots of variables and have quick summary. All you need is just, this is called a frequency table. All you need is just the, okay. So the numbers and the percentages, right? That's all you need there. And that's all. Then you can put all other variables here. This is different from, but again, that's, if you want, you can use that to summarize all your descriptive statistics and move on. However, you can use graphics. Graphics is another beautiful way of, visualizing your data. By just merely looking at it, it sends a whole lot of, very powerful and clear message. For those who are not very good in reading data or reading numerics or quantitative data as it is. So when you look at the visuals, it's present very clear message. However, the disadvantage with this is that it cannot contain whole lots. So you can present only one visual per variable, only one graphic per variable, and that could take a lot of space. So, but in assignments and in projects, I normally advise students for the demographic characteristics. You can use your table to pull all of them in one table. It's quite quick summary. Then for clinical or health outcomes or variables, then you can use that are descriptive in nature. You can use graphics, to show that. So this is just to show you what you can use. Simple graphics. You can use pie charts. You can use bar charts. And bar chart, all these are for categorical variables. Please note that all these are for categorical variables. You can use bar chart. Then you have a clustered bar chart where you can use these to represent two variables. And these two variables are like distribution of death by season. Just a quick example. You want to see the distribution of death by season and see if the distribution differs over the time, by season, or is about the same, like you have here. The death status here, no, 80%, 80.9, no, and yes, 19%. Just say 80, okay, 1981 in winter, and you find out if it's the same, but you can see little, but again, generally, there are more no's than the yes. So that's a way of bringing two variables to, that's one of the powerful features of graphics. By just looking at that, it makes a lot of sense. Then these are still categorical. Then you have this that commonly confuses students. Histogram. A lot of students use histogram for categorical. This is meant for numeric or numeric variable. It's not meant for, even though it could still make sense, even if you use it on categorical variable, it could still make sense. But it's just a question of using a sports car as a truck to carry luggage and logs of woods and so on. It's abusing, right? Even though, yes, it can carry some or carry huge or heavy luggage. But again, this is what it's meant for. It's meant for continuous variable. And it helps you to see the pattern when you pair them together in a prescribed order, ascending order or descending order. You just want to see the clustered nature of the data. Are they all piled up close together, or are they widely spread? And if they are close together, that means they are close together because generally you also use histogram to test the assumption of normality when you say that data sets or certain data should be normally distributed. So it's the distribution of normality. It's a very main, I would say that, purpose of using histogram. So any continuous data, you use histogram to run it and see how they are clustered. And when you're talking about normality, you want to see if there is, it has a bell shape, excuse me, if it has a bell shape, if you pair them together and and it has a bell shape, like, let me give you an example. So like this is this in this form, as you can see, it's not bell shaped. So when you look at it, you wouldn't call it a normal distribution. Normal distribution is when it looks like a bell shaped form, like this, and comes down. If you find any shape, anything similar like this, yes, it's considered normal distribution. And that normal distribution is one of the conditions for determining another kind of statistical test that you will do. It's called parametric or non-parametric test, right? So if your clustered data has this bell shape, it means it's normally distributed. It has met that basic main assumption of determining if you're going to use a parametric test or non-parametric test. So please note that. So this is the simplest form of checking the normality. There is also another statistical form using what was that name again? Shapiro? Yeah, test. That's one of those tests in SPSS. Shapiro and Konglomov or something. So I don't know how to pick I wouldn't pick the names exactly, but I think it's Shapiro test. You can run that and check if it's beyond the statistical significance is more than 5%. If it's more than 5%, then it has passed the test of normality. But this is just a quick graphic way of testing for that. Okay, so that's what histogram is basically used for. But I know in so many times in the test, I've seen students using this for categorical. That doesn't show you understand, even though yes, one can make good sense of that. Then you have okay, sorry. Okay, so you have for descriptive statistics using numeric. That's where you find the median, mean, standard deviation, range, and all that. These are the basic things, basic statistics or tests you run for continuous variables. While for the categorical, it's basically frequency table with numbers and proportions in percentages. Okay, please just note that. And let's go to the main part of this is when you need to determine which of the tests that is more appropriate. However, I think I am going to, I have a lecture, a recorded lecture that speaks clear about this, but a lot of students have complained that the slide there, this slide in particular, is not clear. So they couldn't really pick. So I decided, okay, let me bring it in this lecture because it's also a very key part of this module that you have to know. Now, I'll also share the slide at the end. So note this thing, like I've mentioned before, every research you're going to do will fall under these three categories. Either is a descriptive category, or it's exploring relationship. Sorry, let me try and do something. Okay, sorry. For now, let me just step off my video. So it's either descriptive, or exploring relationship between two variables, or you're looking at checking differences between number of groups. Okay, it have to fall here. So determine where, and this is what your hypothesis would bring out clearly. If you are looking at relationship or association, or if you are looking at test of differences, it will make it clear. And that's why I said it will help you to even know what kind of analysis that you will be conducting. Then if it's just descriptive, I've mentioned that before. For continuous data or continuous variables, you are looking at the mean, standard deviations, and median or whatever variance to describe your population. But if it's categorical, then you are looking out for frequency table, basically. Now, if you're looking at association, you want to conduct association between two variables or any variable, first ask yourself the form of the data. What form of the data? And the two forms of the data, like I mentioned earlier, is the frequency here represents the categorical variable or data, or measurement here is a continuous variable. So if it's categorical, you ask another question. Number of variables that you are dealing with. Are you working with only one variable or two variables or even more, an extension here? Okay, if you're looking at one variable, I just want to see how maybe one variable, let's say age, sorry, okay, let me even say like educational status, no educated, primary education, and secondary or tertiary education, you want to see how their distribution in your sample can be compared with the general distribution in a theoretical distribution in a report or in a literature or somewhere. You just want to see, or you can also want to see if your sample has about the same distribution with the general population, if that is already known. So you want to compare the distribution pattern of your sample with any other. You use the chi-square goodness of fit test, okay, to do that. But if you're looking at association between two categorical variables, education and marital status, or age groups and education, whichever, you want to see if those two are associated, then you look at the chi-square of test of association. Okay, so these are the questions you're going to ask. You go, then the third extension, like I mentioned, which is not here, is when you have multiple variables against one binary outcome. You have multiple variables. You want to see how these variables could predict the binary outcome. And the binary outcome, like I said earlier, has to do with two options. You know, the dependent variables will have only two options. Then you consider the logistics regression. Some will call it multivariable or multivariate or multiple logistics regression. They're all the same. So you consider that. Okay. Now, if the outcome variable is not just binary but ordinal, more than two, but ordinal in nature, as the ordinal data, ordinal variable, like I said, then you consider the ordinal logistic regression. Then if it's just more than two but nominal, you now have the multinomial logistic regression. So that you will all find in SPSS. If you are coming to continuous variables, you also ask them questions. Number of variables. If you are looking at two continuous variables and you want to check relationship, you now come to that part I mentioned earlier. You want to see relationship between height and blood cholesterol level, and all measured as continuous variable. You now ask, are they ordinal? Ordinal here is non-parametric, or are they parametric? This is where the test of normality comes in, the normal distribution I discussed earlier using histogram. This is where it comes in. So, but if it's not normally distributed, you use, it's called the non-parametric test, which is the Spearman's rule for determining relationship between two continuous variables. But if it's parametric, normally distributed, then use the Pearson's correlation coefficient here. Okay. Then if it's more than multiple variables, like you have, I mentioned here in the out of the multiple for logistics. In this case, you have multiple variables trying to predict a continuous variable as outcome variable. Then you consider using the multiple regression model, or the multiple linear regression model. Okay, so let's go to this. If you're looking at test of differences, you want to test difference between two groups or whichever. So you come first to ask yourself, are you looking at just one group and you want to see difference between the mean, take for example, mean age of a group as against the general population, or as against the similar population in the theory, in the literature, or in a report. You want to see if that's the difference. You use one sample t-test. That's the approach. If you're looking at two groups here, you know, ask, are they independent groups? Independent groups means the two groups are mutually exclusive. What happens in one group does not affect the other, and they don't cross over. So the people you have in group A have nothing to do with the people in group B. Okay, so there are two independent groups against paired sample groups. The paired samples or the paired groups means that group 1 has some relationship with the group 2 or with the group 3, but we are talking of two groups here. So what happens in first group has some relationship with what happens in the next group. So here we are looking at independent groups. Then you consider the form of the data. Like I said, maybe you have two groups. Let's say male, maybe in the class, male groups and male and female, and they want to see their test, their performance, their results in research and evaluation at the end of the final assignment. So you want to see what is the average score between the two. Just a quick example. So you now check, is it ordinal, normal distribution, or parametric, like I've discussed. So if it's not parametric, then you use the Mann-Whitney U test. But if it's parametric, then you go for the independent sample t-test. Now you have a case here where you, like I mentioned earlier, where you have the same test. What is very common here is what we call the pre-post intervention. The pre-post intervention design, where you have an intervention, you have just one sample, just one group, and you want to test the effect of certain intervention. So you want to take the baseline measurement from that group. After that, you apply the intervention. At the end of the intervention, you take another similar measurement to see if there's any improvement, if there's any change. So the first baseline, the group is considered as first group. Then when you are after applying intervention and you want to take another measurement, it's also seen as different group, because this is a group with intervention, while the first group is a group without intervention. But technically it's the same group. So you can see they are related. If one person drops, if anything happens to one person, it's likely to affect the end result. So that's what is called the paired sample t-test. And the same format follows here, like I mentioned, up to the end to decide whether you are using the Wilcoxon matched paired test, or you are using the usual paired sample t-test, which is coming from the parametric version of this, or this is the non-parametric version of this. So you just have to know that. Then you have to take us to where you have multiple groups, the multiple groups. So you come down to independent groups or paired groups, like I've explained. Before you now get down to under independent groups, you are now looking at, are you just looking at one independent variable, maybe educational status, that will have more than two options, not educated at all, primary, post-primary, and tertiary. So you have like 4 options. So you have 4 groups, but what you are looking at is just one independent variable, educational status. So if that is the case, you use one-way ANOVA, analysis of variance. Then if you're looking at the same 2 groups, but this time around they have 2 independent variable, probably you're looking at educational status and marital status in the same 2 groups. So you can have a lot of permutation and permutation. I wouldn't want to go through that, but you have different, it's a bit complex this time around. You're not looking at only just one group, you're looking at 2 independent variables. So this time you're using multifactorial ANOVA. It could be more than 2 independent variables. Educational status, marital, and which other categorical that you could be involved. So you use this while getting to the paired samples. So this time around, like I said, the difference here is just that the same group, but you're taking multiple measures. You're taking multiple measures. So you have multiple groups with multiple or repeated measures, then you go for the repeated measures of ANOVA. So this basically the general statistical tree, decision tree, that will help you in your choice of appropriate statistical test that you're going to apply in your research project or your final assignment. So that is that. Now, in a quick one, I have this, the lecture I told you, I won't talk about SPSS, the procedures and the processes and the analytical procedures. So, but here, there's this lecture already in your class or in the Canvas already uploaded. So I took it very, very detailed, tutorial hands-on on how to apply SPSS in any kind of test that will be relevant for your research project and your assignment. You have that 1 and 2. So you find it under lectures here when you get to your classroom. Then basically it's just for you to, that's what I mean, the statistical, the tutorial on the SPSS lectures that I uploaded there. So it's basically for you to understand the basis for choosing appropriate statistical test or plan for your research. I've made this very clear. I learned that the slide there wasn't clear, but this is what I've just repeated now. So you also be able to demonstrate the basic analytical skills using SPSS. You perform basic descriptive data analysis, and you also perform relevant inferential analysis, that I've just described now. So the main contents in those lectures, you will see how to prepare data sets and data importation from spreadsheets and data entry into SPSS. You also learn how to label data codes, then recoding numerical into categorical data variables, and also doing some data computations without necessarily using your calculator or doing some arithmetic outside. You can just work it out inside SPSS, and it will give you the general computation in a different variable, a different variable that you can work with. Then lastly, you learn how to perform common data analysis relevant to you. Descriptive analysis includes the numerical and the categorical analysis, and that of inferential analysis will include the t-test, one-way ANOVA, contingency table and chi-square, linear regression model, and binary logistics regression model. So that's basically all you're going to learn there, from that recorded lecture. It's been a long time anyway, but whenever you do, if you have any questions, please always get back to me. Okay, so far so good. Sorry, it's always this loaded. I know I've run out of time. So let me know in case if you have any questions. Okay, about 2 on the charts. Okay, yes, background information. Okay, kindly talk more on the assignment. Oh, sorry. Yeah, I know. Yeah, students are so quick to jump into the assignment. But I please make sure you listen to my introduction, my live session on introduction to this model. I said a lot about being so quick to jump into the assignment, forgetting the modules, I mean the weekly, forgetting the weekly tasks and the content and all those things you find in your week 1 to week 6 are the building blocks that you need. There's no how you jump them. I get straight to the assignment. If I see any assignment of any students that does not do diligence to the content, to the main work, the weekly task and the content, and doing your resources and the reading, I know, I can quickly tell, and that's an error. So I advise you, yes, we're going to talk about the final assignment in week 5. We're going to discuss whole lots about that in quite detail, but not now. So here, please try and get the building blocks. Just like construction, if you don't get your materials right, there's every likelihood that your construction will collapse at the end of that. You just become waste of resources and waste of everything. Okay? So please, yes, we'll talk about the assignment. Don't worry about that. But focus on these building blocks, the weekly tasks, the reading resources, and ask questions. Okay, no questions. Okay, it's fine. We've come to the end of this live session, but if you have any questions, if you want to ask, please go ahead. Any question? Thank you. Okay, Alonso, thank you. Okay, it's okay. You can send me chats, right my inbox. For this lecture, for this session, you can send, if you have any questions about this, even if you don't have it now, send to my inbox and I'll be happy to respond to you, okay? So I will thank you for your, for attending. Okay, some of us used Jamovi and has never used SPSS. Can we use a movie? Yeah, Vicent, I said something about that. Just consider this as an opportunity for you to get familiar with SPSS. Add it to the package of all the, all the fleets of software and you're familiar with. But you don't have to know all of them. Please, you don't have to know. You can focus on the one that gives you results. But for this, it's an opportunity for you to learn how SPSS works. You never can tell where it will be needful. At least have the idea. Let it be an opportunity for you to know that. After this session, after this class, yes, you can continue with your Jamovi. But for now, because we need your SPSS output, at the end of the session, so you have to use the SPSS. Just learn how it's done. It's not very difficult. It's not difficult at all. It's user-friendly. Just try it and see. Okay? Yeah. Karina, you're asking, is there a quick way to know the correct statistical analysis? we need to use like a shortcut. Wow. Yes, I understand what you mean. We've got into a life of shortcuts, AI, quick button, right? Well, I'm afraid there is none. I don't. Let me say this. Let me say this. I know that AI can do a lot of things. Yes. I don't know how that's going to happen, but there's something about being confident about yourself, about what you know. There's something about confidence in learning. We know we are already in the quick, fast world where everything is gotten the click of button, and people are looking forward to that. And actually, that's one of the biggest problems we are suffering today in terms of obesity, not exercising our brains, not exercising our body. Now we are going out there to do some road walk, some walk out in the garden, some power push to force our body to work. It's exactly the same thing that is likely to be happening when you are so used to AI, when your brain will start becoming dormant, right? There's no shortcut. The essence of you coming to class is for you to learn these principles and concepts so that even when AI makes any mistake, you never can tell. You can tell. For example, if I look at the data sets, I can tell when my SPSS output is wrong and I will go back. But if I don't have the idea or the principles to follow the processes and the procedures, what could be obtainable, if I just push a button, whatever garbage comes out, I will take it as an answer. That is one thing I wanted to know and to learn. So please, there's no quick way. However, if you have any question, just try, take a little pain to follow it one after the other. I could have taken my time to respond and explain that, but because of time, I try to make it a quick one. However, please send me any questions. I'll be more delighted to explain and make sure that you understand the processes. So even when you choose to use whatever quick process, if it's garbage in and garbage out, when you get the garbage out, you can tell that this is a garbage out, and you don't have to present that and, shame yourself in the public. And people will know that you didn't even go through this, or you don't even have an idea of what the concept or the principle is all about. Okay? Okay, so thank you. Quick one. Yes. Okay, yes, because I'm struggling to download the SPSS, was thinking of going to campus for the department. Yes, please contact student support if you're having issues with downloading SPSS. They should be able to make that accessible to you or guide you how to access that. Please, please do that. Vincent. Okay, Andrea, do you maybe have a higher resolution of the flow diagram on slide 23? I searched the source from the module and could not. Okay, I will share this slide. I will share this slide with you and see if that flow is clearer, and let me know when I share that. Okay, I think this is clearer. Yeah, I will share that with you. Okay, Karina, thank you. So how can we know if it is correct or if we need a different one? What are you referring to, please? Karina, what are you referring to, please? I don't get that. How can we know if it is correct? What is correct? Okay. Joy, kindly drop your email. Okay, who are you asking to drop the email? My email or whose? Andrea, thank you. Okay. Statistical analysis we used. Okay. Oh, okay, to know if it's correct. Okay. What will happen is that I think you have an opportunity of having a formative task in week 5. Yeah, you have that opportunity. So you can share what, after going through the resources and my this lecture, you can share what test you choose for your final assignment. Maybe I could find a way of advising you without telling you the answer, because that's not what we are meant to do. I'm not supposed to tell you. The instructors are supposed to direct or tell the students, so it doesn't look like we are conniving to do your assignment. That would be unfair to other students, but I'll find a way of letting you know if that decision is correct or not. But in your formative assignment, you also let me know the justifications why you choose what you choose, and I will help you to know if it's correct or not. Okay? Okay. Any other question? Thank you. Okay. Okay. I think I've responded to that. Okay. Okay. Thank you. Oh, yeah, Karina. Thank you. Okay. So thank you, everyone. The time is fast spent. Yeah. So see you. Send me any questions you want in the chat box. I'll be happy to respond. Okay. So that we don't get this time beyond the specific time or the duration. So thank you so much, and thank you everyone for coming and joining. I wish you the best of luck and the best in your thank you, in your module. Please, we are here for you, so always try to reach out. Bye.